absolutely no way the center can hold when the forces that are supposed to be bringing order are failing to do so. My dear brother here has spoken about the 2010 Constitution. We're in 2024. We had 10 good years of growth during President Uhuru Kenyatta's tenure. And truth be told, all these problems we are getting right now is because of lack of competency in the current administration. When you talk about taxation, in this country today, you have to have policies that are clearly defined, not policies that are unstable, whereby as an investor or as a businessman, if you are to import commodities from different countries, you're not so sure by the time that ship docks what taxes are going to be introduced. So the problem is this. We have an incompetent administration, which is coupled with the fact that there is greed for personal wealth, such that people do not really look at the citizens who elected them. The other big problem that we're facing in this country, and that's why I'm saying the center cannot hold, is because this country and the leadership has now turned to be a puppet of the IMF and the World Bank. All these structural adjustment policies are known to destroy countries. There's not a single country where the IMF has been pushing for legislation right, left, and center where it has succeeded. We are failing. We're failing because we are being controlled by the outside, but not from within. We have not been able to realign our own existing resources. Every so often, there are legislation that comes in. Some as ludicrous as saying that you now want to start taxing farmers. A farmer who is in the rural area, who has no clue how much you've borrowed. You've not been clear to say this is the direction we are taking. Every so often, this cabinet secretary releases their own policies. They say this is what we're going to do. They keep on lying. The legislative arm of government, constantly, and in fact, the member of parliament here can attest to that, are always crying that things have changed drastically, such that they don't even have bursaries. They don't have their CDF kitty release. They're always threatening that they will shut down parliament because of, because of all those problems. So the issue here is this. When my brother talks about Kenyans paying taxes, every Kenyan loves to pay taxes, but there's only so much that you can be able to tax. In fact, Kenyans are now begging and saying, what you do, you take our salary and give us the taxes as our salary. Because people do not have the way forward. We have problems. Let me tell you, Abdikadir, what is happening. The policies of this government, and when you look at even county governments at the same place, they are borrowing. Some of them are borrowing from those policies, and they are ending up chasing away investors. Right now, Kenyans are facing a period where unemployment will skyrocket. Poverty levels will skyrocket. And that is exactly where the IMF and the World Bank want us to be. The president talks about issues that, the opposition keeps on talking about what we are doing wrong, and they don't come up with suggestions. Today I'll be very fair, and I'll say, listen, I think you need to sit down and really think what happened in the last 10 years of Uhuru, what happened during the time of Kibaki. We are referring, when Kibaki took over government, it would be justifiable to say that he took over the country which was broke. But he was able to realign the existing resources, not always to keep on blaming. You cannot keep on waking up, and acting as if you are the alpha and the omega. The reason why there are three distinct arms of government is so that they can be able to check each other. When you talk about the education sector as an example, it would be prudent for the executive to sit down with the legislative arm of government and look at the legislation process. But today, let me tell you what happens. It is executive who draft legislations. You talked about the healthcare. The laws that have been passed, that have been questioned in court, were drafted by the executive arm of government. And the ministry drafted them, brought them, and within a fortnight, you are forced to make sure that they are ascended into law.
Which ought not to be the case.
It ought not to be the case.
Then why is problem? Why is Parliament absent?
I'll tell you why. It is because the current administration has managed to really muscle its way through the legislative arm of government. You know, the Kenya Kwanza MPs, I can be very honest with you, and I want to be very fair, but be very factual as well. None of them actually read the legislative proposals. They just come and say, oh, tunapitisha. And then after that piece of law has been ascended into law, you know, or that bill has been ascended into law, they start asking, hey, na hii taxes zimekuwa mingi, na hii taxes zimekuwa mingi. They all now start saying, oh, this is the problem. Because what is happening is that there is something called unintended consequences. You might think that by, you know, raising taxes, you will collect more money. But what will happen is that people will lay off, you know, employees.
Okay.
People will close businesses, you know. So you really have to think and say, what has worked over the past 10 years, you know, and what has not worked. We cannot continue thinking we are a fast developing country. No, we're not. We are still a country where, if you look at the gap between the rich and the poor, it's so wide. What we are now doing is that we are widening that gap and doing away with the middle class.
Okay.
Kibaki brought up the middle class, built up the middle class. That's when you saw people now starting driving vehicles, having mortgages. What Ruto is doing now is taking us back to an era where it was the rich versus the poor. No more middle class.
Okay.